I watched my family laugh at a resort pool on Facebook while floodwaters rose past my knees in my apartment. My own mother had hung up on me hours earlier, claiming she couldn't deal with my drama during Hurricane Harvey. As I stood on my kitchen counter, phone battery dying, I realized the truth. Have you ever wondered how far your own family would go to betray you for money? I never imagined mine would leave me to drown. Like this video if you've ever been shocked by someone you thought you could trust, and let me know in the comments if you think family should always come first, no matter what. My name is Isabella Rivera. I'm 31 years old, and until 2 years ago I thought I had a normal family in Houston, Texas. Not perfect, but normal. My parents, Alina and Marco, ran a moderately successful real estate business. My older brother Dominic worked with them, the golden child who could do no wrong. Then there was my younger sister Sophia, the baby of the family who everyone doted on. I was the middle child, the responsible one who became a social worker instead of joining the family business. They never let me forget it was a disappointment. Such wasted potential, my father would say at family dinners, but I loved helping people, especially children in crisis. The pay wasn't great, but the work mattered. My grandmother Luisa was different. She understood me. Isabella has the biggest heart, she'd say, squeezing my hand. Some people build houses, others build lives. She lived with us growing up, teaching me to cook traditional recipes and telling stories about our ancestors who came from Mexico with nothing but hope. When she passed away 6 months before the hurricane, I was devastated. The lawyer read her will at the family gathering. Most of her modest savings went to my parents, but she left me her antique jewelry collection and a small property on the outskirts of Houston. Isabella appreciates history and roots, the will stated. I noticed my mother's tight smile that day, but thought nothing of it. Then, Hurricane Harvey hit in August 2017. The forecasts were getting worse by the hour. I lived in a first-floor apartment in a low-lying area. My car had broken down the week before, and I was waiting for repairs. As the rain intensified and streets began flooding, I called my parents. "Mom, the water's rising fast here. Can Dad come get me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Isabella, we're very busy right now," she sighed. "A lot is going on." "Mom, they're saying this is going to be really bad. I don't have a car." "You always do this, Isabella. Every little problem becomes a crisis with you." I was stunned. This isn't a little problem. The street is already flooded. "I'm sorry, I can't deal with your drama right now," she snapped, and then the line went dead. I tried calling back, straight to voicemail. I texted my dad, my brother, and my sister. Nothing. As the water started seeping under my door, I grabbed my grandmother's jewelry box, important documents, and climbed onto my kitchen counter. I called neighbors, friends, and emergency services. The 911 operator told me they had hundreds of calls and to get to my roof if possible. Hours later, I was rescued by volunteers in a fishing boat. They took me to a temporary shelter at a local high school. My phone was dead. When I finally found a charging station and turned it back on, there were no missed calls from my family. Not a single text asking if I was okay. But there were Facebook notifications. I opened the app to see if any family members had posted about being affected by the storm. What I saw made my blood run cold. My mother had posted photos from a resort in Cancun. My entire family was there, drinks in hand, lounging by a pool. "Needed getaway, blessed," read the caption. The timestamp showed it was posted the day before the hurricane hit. They had left town, knowing the hurricane was coming. They hadn't forgotten about me. They had abandoned me. I scrolled through more photos in disbelief. There was a comment from my mother on a Houston news channel's post about evacuation orders, praying for everyone back home. They knew exactly what was happening. They just didn't care if it happened to me. Mrs. Patel, my neighbor who had been rescued from the same apartment building, saw my face as I stared at my phone. "Are you okay, dear?" she asked, placing her hand on my shoulder. "My family," I couldn't finish the sentence. She looked at my screen. Her expression shifted from concern to something harder. "Some people don't deserve to be called family," she said quietly. I stayed at the Red Cross shelter for 3 days before the waters receded enough to return to what was left of my apartment. Everything on the first floor was destroyed. Furniture, clothes, books, electronics, all ruined. The only things I had saved were my grandmother's jewelry and my documents. Finally, on the fourth day, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Isabella, are you okay? We just got back and heard about the flooding in your area." The casual tone made my stomach turn. "Where were you?" I asked flatly. "Oh, we decided to take a quick family vacation. Your father had some business contacts in Cancun, and we thought we'd make a trip of it." "You knew the hurricane was coming." A pause. "Well, we heard about it while we were there. Such terrible timing." "I called you, Mom. I called when the water was rising. You hung up on me." Another pause. "You're being dramatic. We couldn't have known how bad it would be." "You saw the news. You commented on it." "Isabella, I don't know what you're talking about. Are you okay? Do you need anything?" I took a deep breath. "No, I don't need anything from you." I hung up. 10 minutes later, my sister Sophia called. "Izzy, Mom's really upset. What did you say to her?" "Why didn't anyone tell me about the trip?" I asked instead of answering. "Oh, it was last minute. Dad had a meeting and they decided we should all go. You were busy with work and we knew you couldn't leave your cases." The lie came so easily to her. I had specifically told my family the week before that I had requested time off because my apartment complex was scheduled for maintenance. They knew I would be home. I almost drowned Sophia. "Don't be so dramatic. You're fine, aren't you? Look, we're having dinner at the house tonight. Come over and we can talk about it." I agreed, not because I wanted reconciliation, but because I needed answers. When I arrived at my parents' home that evening, everything looked normal. No hurricane damage in their affluent neighborhood. My brother's Mercedes and my sister's BMW sat in the driveway alongside my parents' vehicles. I parked my old Honda, still damp from being partially submerged, behind them. "Isabella," my mother hugged me as if nothing had happened. "You look terrible. Have you been sleeping?" "My apartment was underwater 3 days ago," I said flatly. "Well, you're here now. Come eat." Dinner was surreal. They talked about their trip, complaining about slow service at the resort and a sunburn my father had gotten. Not once did they ask about what I had experienced during the hurricane. When I brought it up, they changed the subject. After dinner, my father cleared his throat. "Isabella, we've been thinking this might be a good opportunity for you." "Opportunity?" "To move on from that depressing job of yours. You could come work with us at the agency. We've been expanding, and we could use someone to handle the paperwork." I stared at him. My apartment is destroyed. Everything I own is gone. Exactly, a fresh start. Something cold settled in my stomach. There was more to this than awkward family dynamics. "What about Grandma's property?" I asked suddenly. "It's on higher ground. I could stay there while I rebuild." The room went silent. My mother and father exchanged glances. "About that," my mother said carefully, "we've been meaning to talk to you. That property. There's been a complication with the will." "What kind of complication?" My father leaned forward. "The area's being rezoned for commercial development. The property value has tripled, but there are taxes, legal issues. It's complicated, Isabella. We think the best thing would be for you to sign it over to us. We'll handle everything and give you a fair part." And there it was, the first piece of the puzzle. "When did you find out about the rezoning?" I asked. "Recently," my mother said quickly. "Before or after you left for Cancun?" No one answered. "I need to think about it," I said, standing up. "I'm staying with a friend from work. I'll call you." As I walked to the door, my brother followed me. "Izzy, wait, don't be difficult about this. Mom and Dad know what they're doing." I turned to look at him. "Did you know there was a hurricane coming when you all left?" His eyes darted away. It wasn't supposed to be that bad. "You knew," I whispered. "You all knew and you left me there." The betrayal was complete. My family had abandoned me during a natural disaster because they wanted my inheritance. They had hoped the hurricane would solve the problem of convincing me to give up the property. If something had happened to me, the property would have reverted to my parents as next of kin. They had left me to die. I drove away from my childhood home with a clarity I had never felt before. This wasn't just about a property or money. This was about my life having so little value to the people who were supposed to love me most. The realization was like ice in my veins, numbing the pain and sharpening my focus. The next day, I went to see my grandmother's lawyer, Mr. Grimes. He was surprised to see me. "Isabella, I'm glad you're okay. I heard about the flooding in your area." "Thank you, I'm here about my grandmother's property." He frowned. "What about it? Has anyone from my family contacted you about it recently?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Your father called last week. He mentioned something about representing your interests in the rezoning matter." "Did he say I had agreed to that?" "He implied you were on board, yes." I leaned forward. "Mr. Grimes, I never agreed to anything, and I need to know everything about that property and what my family might be planning." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Your grandmother was very fond of you, Isabella. She wouldn't want you to be taken advantage of." What he told me over the next hour changed everything. The property wasn't just being rezoned. A major developer had approached my father's real estate agency about acquiring several properties in the area, including my grandmother's land. The potential profit wasn't just triple the value, it was nearly 20 times what the property had been worth when my grandmother died. My father hadn't disclosed this to me, nor had he disclosed that he'd already been in talks with the developer before my grandmother passed away. He'd known about the potential windfall and had tried to convince my grandmother to sell. "She refused," Mr. Grimes said. "She was quite adamant that the property stay in the family. She specifically wanted you to have it because she knew you wouldn't sell it just for profit. And my parents knew this. They were present when she made her wishes clear." I sat back, processing this information. "Is there anything else I should know?" Mr. Grimes hesitated. "There is one thing. Your grandmother made a video statement as part of her will. She asked that it only be shown if there was a dispute about her intentions." "I'd like to see it." He set up his laptop and played the video. My grandmother's face appeared on screen, her eyes clear despite her illness. "If you're watching this," she began, "then someone is trying to go against my wishes. Isabella, mi querida, the property is yours to do with as you wish, but know that it meant something to me. It was the first piece of America our family truly owned. Your grandfather and I worked so hard for it. I leave it to you because you understand the value of things beyond money. Elena, Marco, respect your daughter's inheritance. Some legacies aren't measured in dollars." Tears streamed down my face as the video ended. Mr. Grimes handed me a tissue. "There's one more thing," he said. "Your grandmother left a sealed letter for you. She asked me to give it to you only if you came asking questions about the will." The letter was in a simple envelope with my name written in my grandmother's shaky handwriting. I opened it carefully. "Mi querida Isabella," it began. "If you're reading this, then you've sensed something isn't right. I've watched how they treat you, like your kindness is weakness, like your heart is a flaw. It isn't, but be careful. Your mother has always been jealous of our bond, and your father sees only profit where I see home. The safe in my bedroom closet has something for you. The combination is your birthday. Te quiero, mi niña valiant." My grandmother had seen it all, the dynamics I had normalized, the subtle cruelty I had accepted as just being the middle child. And she had prepared for this. I needed to get into my parents' house and find whatever was in that safe. But first, I needed allies and information. I started by contacting Mrs. Patel, my neighbor from the apartment building. She invited me to her sister's home, where she was staying temporarily. "I saved some photos," she told me, showing me her phone. "When the water was rising and you were calling for help, I thought someone should document what was happening." The photos showed me standing on my kitchen counter, water up to the countertop, phone pressed to my ear, clearly in distress. The timestamps matched exactly when I had been calling my family. "And I have this," she said, showing me screenshots she'd taken of my family's social media posts during the hurricane. "My niece showed me how to save these. I thought you might need them someday." Mrs. Patel had been watching out for me even as my own family abandoned me. Her kindness brought fresh tears to my eyes. "They don't deserve you," she said firmly. My Vikram was the same, always trying to please people who couldn't be pleased. It took him 50 years to learn what you're learning now. Some people will never value you, no matter what you do. With Mrs. Patel's help, I formed a plan. I needed to get into my parents' house when they weren't home. I knew their schedules. Friday afternoons, my mother had her standing hair appointment, and my father played golf with clients. That Friday, I parked a block away and walked to the house. I still had my key. Inside, everything was quiet. I went straight to what had been my grandmother's bedroom, now used as a guest room. The closet was filled with storage boxes and old clothes, but the safe was still there, hidden behind hanging garments. I entered my birthday, and the safe clicked open. Inside was a small box and another envelope. The envelope contained documents, old property deeds, tax records, and a handwritten ledger. The box held a flash drive and a smaller jewelry box containing a beautiful emerald ring I'd never seen before. A note with the ring read, "This was your great-grandmother's. It came with her from Mexico. Elena always wanted it, but it belongs to you now. It represents our true family legacy." I pocketed everything and was about to close the safe when I heard a noise downstairs. Someone was home. I carefully shut the safe, put everything back in place, and listened. It was my sister's voice, and she wasn't alone. "I don't understand why we have to keep pretending," she was saying. "She almost found out in the hurricane. Why don't we just tell her the truth?" "Because," came my brother's voice, "if she finds out she's not actually related to Dad, she might contest the will on different grounds. Mom's affair was a long time ago, but legally it could change everything." I froze, not related to my father. What were they talking about? "It's not like she's ever fit in anyway," my sister continued. "She doesn't even look like the rest of us." "Keep your voice down," my brother hissed. "Dad would lose it if he heard you talking about Mom's mistake." "I'm just saying, Isabella's never been one of us. Not really. And now with this property thing, Dad says we need to get her signature before the developer's deadline next month. We've already spent some of the advance. We'll figure it out. Mom thinks she can guilt her into signing. You know Isabella, always trying to please everyone." I stood in shocked silence, trying to process what I just heard. I wasn't my father's daughter. My mother had had an affair? This explained so much. The different treatment, the emotional distance, the constant criticism. I waited until I heard them leave before slipping out of the house. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely drive. I went straight to a coffee shop with free Wi-Fi and plugged in the flash drive. It contained old photos, documents, and several audio recordings. The photos showed my mother with another man, younger photos from before I was born. They looked happy, in love. There were letters too, passionate and secret. His name was Carlos Vega. According to the dates, their relationship had ended just after I was born. The audio recordings were the most shocking. They were conversations between my grandmother and my mother from years ago, captured without my mother's knowledge. "You can't keep treating her differently, Elena," my grandmother's voice said. "She's your daughter." "She's a reminder of my mistake," my mother replied coldly. "Marco provides for her because he's a decent man, but don't expect more than that. She doesn't understand why her own parents don't love her the same way they love the others." "That's not my problem." "It is your problem. She is your child." "A child I never should have had." I shut off the recording, feeling physically ill. My entire life had been a lie. The rejection, the criticism, the emotional neglect, it wasn't because I had failed somehow. It was because I was living proof of my mother's infidelity, a secret they had kept from me my entire life. And now they were trying to steal my inheritance, because they didn't even consider me real family. Something broke inside me that day, and something else was born. The loyal, people-pleasing Isabella died in that coffee shop. In her place emerged someone colder, clearer, and unwaveringly focused on justice. The next day, I went to see Mr. Grimes again. I showed him everything I had found. "This is quite something," he said, examining the documents. "Do you know what you want to do with this information?" "I want to know my rights," I said, "and I want to know exactly what my family has been doing behind my back." What he uncovered was even worse than I had imagined. My father's real estate company had already received a large payment from the developer, a good faith deposit that assumed the entire block of properties, including my grandmother's land, would be sold. They had spent this money on the Cancun trip, new cars for my siblings, and expanding their business. More digging revealed they had significant debt hidden beneath their affluent lifestyle. They needed the development deal to go through, and they needed my signature on the property transfer. Without it, they'd lose the deposit they'd already spent and could face legal action from the developer. They were desperate, and they had left me to drown rather than face me with the truth. I also looked into my biological father, Carlos Vega. He had moved to Austin years ago and owned a small bookstore there. According to social media, he had never married or had other children. I wondered if he even knew about me. As my investigation continued, I received increasingly pressuring calls and texts from my family about the property. My mother went from guilt trips to outright manipulation. "After all we've done for you," she said during one call, "your father and I gave you everything." The irony of her words nearly made me laugh. "I need more time," I kept saying, stringing them along while I built my case and finalized my plan. I decided to visit Carlos Vega in Austin. I didn't tell him who I was at first, just browsed his bookstore and struck up a conversation. He was kind, with the same dark eyes as mine and a similar way of tilting his head when listening. I asked if he'd lived in Houston before, and his face changed. "A lifetime ago," he said softly. I returned the next day and the next, building a rapport. On the third visit, I finally gathered my courage. "Mr. Vega, my name is Isabella Rivera. I believe you knew my mother, Elena Rivera, about 30 years ago." He dropped the book he was holding. "Isabella," he whispered, my name familiar on his lips. "She named you Isabella." "Did you know about me?" I asked. His eyes filled with tears. I suspected. Elena told me she was pregnant, then suddenly cut off all contact, said her husband would raise the baby as his own, and I should stay away. "I tried to see you once when you were about 5. Your mother threatened to call the police." "Did you want to be in my life?" "Every day since I heard about you," he said simply. "I've looked you up online over the years just to know you were okay. I saw that you became a social worker. I was so proud, even though I had no right to be." Something inside me healed a little that day. The knowledge that someone had wanted me, had thought about me all these years, was a balm to my wounded soul. Carlos and I spent hours talking. He showed me old photos, told me stories about his family, my family, and asked about my life with genuine interest. He never once made excuses for not fighting harder to be in my life, instead apologizing with a sincerity my parents had never shown. "I'd like to get to know you," he said as I was leaving, "if that's something you want." For the first time in weeks, I smiled genuinely. I'd like that very much. Armed with the truth and a new ally in Carlos, I was ready to confront my family. But first, I needed to understand exactly what was at stake with the property. I met with an independent real estate appraiser and showed her the property documents. Her assessment confirmed what I suspected. The land was worth far more than my family had implied. With the rezoning and development plans, it was the cornerstone of the entire project. Without it, the development couldn't proceed as planned. "They need your property," the appraiser explained. "It's the access point for the whole development. Without it, they'd have to redesign everything, which would cost millions and delay the project by years." I also consulted with a lawyer specializing in family law and inheritance disputes. She reviewed everything I had discovered. "You have a very strong case here," she said. "Not just to keep your inheritance, but potentially for damages due to their deception and attempts to defraud you." "I don't just want to keep what's mine," I told her. "I want them to face consequences for what they did." She studied me carefully. "There are legal avenues we can pursue, but I sense you're looking for something more personally satisfying." "Justice," I said simply. "I want justice." With all the pieces in place, I texted my mother that I was ready to discuss the property and asked for a family meeting that weekend. She replied immediately, suggesting dinner at their house on Saturday. "Perfect," I wrote back. "I'll be bringing someone with me who's helping me with my decisions." She assumed I meant a friend or colleague. I didn't correct her. That Saturday evening, I arrived at my parents' house with Carlos beside me. The resemblance between us was subtle but undeniable. My brother answered the door, his smile freezing when he saw my companion. "Who's this?" he asked suspiciously. "This is Carlos," I said calmly. "He's very interested in our family discussion." We walked into the dining room, where my parents and sister were waiting. My mother took one look at Carlos and turned white. My father frowned in confusion. "Elena," Carlos said softly, "it's been a long time." "What is this?" my father demanded, looking between my mother and Carlos. This, I said, placing the flash drive and documents on the table, is the truth. Carlos Vega is my biological father, and you all left me to drown during a hurricane to steal my inheritance. The room erupted in chaos. My mother denied everything. My father shouted about betrayal. My siblings looked stunned. I waited for the noise to die down before speaking again. I have proof of everything, I continued calmly. The affair, the decades of lies, the development deal you've already spent money on, and your desperation to get my signature. I showed them the photos Mrs. Patel had taken during the hurricane alongside screenshots of their vacation posts. You left me to die, I said, my voice steady despite the emotion rising in my throat. Your own daughter, sister, or half-sister, I should say. It wasn't like that, my mother protested weakly. It was exactly like that, and now you have a choice. I laid out my terms. They would publicly confess to their developer partners that they had misrepresented their ownership of my property. They would return every penny of the deposit they had received. They would sign legal documents acknowledging their deception and relinquishing any claim to my grandmother's property or possessions. And if we refuse, my father asked, his face red with anger. I smiled coldly. Then, tomorrow morning, the developer receives this file detailing your fraud. The Ethics Committee of the Real Estate Board gets copies of these documents showing you misrepresented ownership. And this evidence of you knowingly abandoning a family member during a natural disaster goes to every news outlet in Houston. You wouldn't, my sister gasped. The Isabella you knew wouldn't have, I agreed. But she drowned in that apartment while you were sipping margaritas in Cancun. My brother tried a different approach. Izzy, we're still family. We can work this out. Are we family? I asked, looking at each of them. Was I ever really family to any of you? No one answered. That's what I thought, I said, standing. You have until Monday morning to agree to my terms. After that, I can't guarantee your reputations or careers will survive. As Carlos and I walked out, my mother called after me, her voice breaking. Isabella, please, I'm still your mother. I turned back one last time. No, you're just the woman who gave birth to me. There's a difference. The weekend passed without a word from them. Monday morning, I was prepared to send everything to the developer, the real estate board, and the media. Then my phone rang. It was my father. We'll sign whatever you want, he said, his voice defeated. Just don't send those files. We met at Mr. Grimes's office that afternoon. They signed every document without argument. As they were leaving, my father looked at me with something like respect in his eyes. You're more like me than I thought, he said, ruthless when necessary. No, I corrected him. I'm nothing like you. I'm just protecting what's mine and making sure you face consequences for your actions. That's justice, not ruthlessness. With my grandmother's property securely in my possession and my family's deception exposed, I had decisions to make. I met with the developer directly and negotiated my own terms. I would sell a part of the land, enough for their project to proceed, but retain the original house and surrounding garden where my grandmother had grown her roses. The price I negotiated was triple what my family had been offered, with additional terms ensuring the development would include affordable housing units and a small community garden named after my grandmother. I used part of the money to establish a fund for hurricane victims, specifically helping families who had lost everything to rebuild their lives. Another part went to starting my own nonprofit, providing advocacy and support for children caught in family disputes. Carlos and I developed a real relationship. He was the parent I'd never had, supportive, kind, and genuinely interested in my happiness rather than how I reflected on him. He helped me renovate my grandmother's house, turning it into a home that honored her memory while becoming truly mine. As for my mother, father, and siblings, they faced the consequences of their actions. The developer's lawyers came after them for the misrepresentation, forcing them to sell their expensive home and downsize dramatically. My father's real estate business suffered when word got out about his ethical violations. They weren't destitute, but the facade of success they had maintained was permanently cracked. They made attempts to reconcile, especially as their financial situation worsened. I remained civil but distant. Some betrayals can't be undone with apologies. A year after Hurricane Harvey, I hosted a memorial garden dedication at my property, honoring both my grandmother and those who had died in the storm. I invited Mrs. Patel and other neighbors from my old apartment building. Carlos was there, proudly introducing himself as my father. My blood relatives were not invited. Have you ever wondered what justice really feels like? It isn't the hot satisfaction of revenge that movies portray. It's cooler, calmer, a balancing of scales. In finding the truth about my family, I lost the illusion of belonging I had desperately clung to all my life. But I gained something more valuable: authenticity. I stand now in my grandmother's garden, tending the roses she loved, surrounded by people who choose to love me for who I am. The water that nearly claimed my life washed away my need for approval from those who never truly saw me. Some families are born, others are found. Mine is smaller now, but real. They say blood is thicker than water, but they forget the full proverb. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The family we choose, the promises we keep, these bonds run deeper than mere genetics. My mother left me to drown, but in those rising waters I found my strength. I am my grandmother's legacy, not my mother's shame. If you've ever had to rebuild your life after someone's betrayal, you understand the journey I've been on. Leave a comment sharing how you found your strength after a personal hurricane. And if this story resonated with you, subscribe for more real stories about finding justice and rebuilding what was broken. Because sometimes the family we create matters more than the one we're born into.